Netanyahu is a friend, not a foe, and one of the U.S.'s strongest, if not the strongest alliance sorry, I'm looking at my phone because these are breaking. Strongest alliance in the region. So there's a lot unfolding right now as I'm talking.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the interview room real fast. Hey, while there's a lot of attention going on in the country about the riots and et cetera, I wanted to bring to your attention quickly that the Israeli government has attacked
October 7th. We have seen that
the country
US
of Iran
forces
and
covertly,
intentions were to knock out their nuclear
Israel
capability,
in the region,
and I just thought this was important enough
with enough
to get it out there as quickly as possible for everybody. So I just want to listen along with you because this is a breaking story. It literally just happened about 30 minutes ago, and it's just starting to hit the news. And so
they had the range to get to Israel, and also for Israel to show it had the lines to shoot them.
Take a look at what's going on. So I'm going to turn up the volume here.
Netanyahu is confident that Israel can be protected immediately and in the coming days is what we're going to have to wait and see. But clearly he was confident enough to do this, or desperate enough politically. That's the big question. There are a lot of question marks about why now, why not wait till the sixth round, why not wait through the weekend. Clearly this was something that President Trump has said, in the 11th hour, if their bombs are going, he hasn't said this, but people have told me that experts say President Trump would want to go as fast and as furious as possible to get them to agree to a deal, but not to make sure that a deal is called off. And this is what Netanyahu might be putting into peril, an actual deal between the US and Iran to curb their nuclear power ambitions. They do have, and they have had enough Iranian enrichment. They up that in days and weeks to create about 10 nuclear warheads. We know that. I've talked to many sources about this. It's not an abstract idea. Maybe Netanyahu believed that this was the last moment, but why now? Why not Monday?
Courtney Keeley, our Middle East reporter for CBS News. Courtney, I know you want to check your phone. All your sources are calling and texting you, letting you know what's going on in that region. Thank you so much for staying with us and for giving us some context into what's going on right now. Again, if you're just joining us, Israel has launched airstrikes against Iran. We're still waiting to hear about the actual targets. It's just the sun is about ready to come up in just a couple of hours in Iran right there. But we're hearing that explosions did ring out across Iran's capital, Tehran. People awoke to the sound of the blast. State TV, they're also reporting on the blast. And Israel's defense minister announced what he called a special situation in Israel over its attack on Iran. He said schools would also be closed in the country tomorrow. We're going to stay on top of this breaking news story right here on CBS News 24/7 and CBS News Prime Time. And actually, we're hearing a statement from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Let's listen to his statement from just moments ago.
Months ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival. 80 years ago, the Jewish people were the victims of a Holocaust perpetrated by the Nazi regime. Today, the Jewish state refuses to be a victim of a nuclear Holocaust perpetrated by the Iranian regime. Now, as Prime Minister, I've made it clear time and again, Israel will never allow those who call for our annihilation to develop the means to achieve that goal. Tonight, Israel backs those words with action. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear enrichment program. We struck at the heart of Iran's nuclear weaponization program. We targeted Iran's main enrichment facility in Natanz. We targeted Iran's leading nuclear scientists working on the Iranian bomb. We also struck at the heart of Iran's ballistic missile program. Last year, Iran fired 300 ballistic missiles at Israel. Each of these missiles carries a ton of explosives and threatens the lives of hundreds of people. Soon, those missiles could carry a nuclear payload, threatening the lives not of hundreds, but of millions. Iran is gearing up to produce 10,000 of those ballistic missiles within 3 years. Now just imagine 10,000 tons of TNT landing on a country the size of New Jersey. This is an intolerable threat. It too must be stopped. Iran is now working on what it calls the new plan to destroy Israel. You see, the old plan failed. Iran and its proxies try to encircle Israel with a ring of fire and to attack us with the horrible attack of October 7th. But the people of Israel, the soldiers of Israel, rose like lions to defend our country. We crushed Hamas, we devastated Hezbollah, we hit Iranian proxies in Syria and Yemen. And when Iran directly attacked us twice last year, we struck back inside Iran itself. Yet in defending ourselves, we also defend others. We defend our Arab neighbors. They too have suffered from Iran's campaign of chaos and carnage. Our actions against Iran's proxy Hezbollah led to the establishment of a new government in Lebanon and the collapse of Assad's murderous regime in Syria. The peoples of those two countries now have a chance for a different future, a better future. So too do the brave people of Iran, and I have a message for them. Our fight is not with you. Our fight is with the brutal dictatorship that has oppressed you for 46 years. I believe that the day of your liberation is near. And when that happens, the great friendship between our two ancient peoples will flourish once again. I want to assure the civilized world, we will not let the world's most dangerous regime get the world's most dangerous weapons. And Iran plans to give those weapons, nuclear weapons, to its terrorist proxies. That would make the nightmare of nuclear terrorism all too real. The increasing range of Iran's ballistic missiles would bring that nuclear.
And that was Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu giving a statement on the airstrikes that Israel has just conducted on Iran. I want to bring in CBS News Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Margaret Brennan. Margaret, I know that you are talking to your sources and gathering information. What have you learned so far?
Yes, we've been trying to communicate with sources here in the U.S. and overseas. What we know is what the Prime Minister just announced, that these were Israeli jets targeting sites within Iran that he says were related to the nuclear program that Iran has claimed for so long is entirely peaceful. U.S. intelligence has been concerned about the level of highly enriched uranium that Iran had stockpiled, but had assessed that Iran had not yet decided to pursue a weapon and that it would take some time for them to do so. In his statement there, the Prime Minister said Israel's assertion is that Iran had stockpiled enough nuclear fuel for 9 weapons and that they could build one in less than a year. He did not explain why he felt tonight was the night it had to be done, that some of those targets were hit. I do want to point out that the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has released a statement making clear the United States did not provide support in terms of offensive support to this military strike. It didn't participate in it, but Israeli officials are telling me that the U.S. Was aware of Israel's intention and these strikes. In the reporting of this throughout the day, it has been a back and forth as to when a potential strike could take place. What we know at this point is just what the Israeli Prime Minister has detailed. We don't know yet if this completely kills the diplomatic option that President Trump said he preferred and was sending his chief negotiator to talk to Iranian officials about this Sunday in Oman. We're waiting to hear from the administration if they think that diplomacy is in any way an option. Why would that still be necessary? Well, we don't know that Israel was able to actually take out the entire nuclear program. Iran has underground facilities that the U.S. is uniquely positioned to be able to destroy. And the U.S. has said that it would be hard for Israel to actually destroy the nuclear program without U.S. help. So this may be a damage to this program, but not destruction of it. We'll just have to wait to see what more becomes apparent in the next few hours and days in terms of assessments of the targets hit. The Prime Minister said it could last for a few days.
And President Trump is planning to hold a cabinet meeting tomorrow at the White House. I'm curious, what are you going to be watching for in that meeting?
Well, I think all of us will be chasing all details we can, just as we were when we heard yesterday there was a meeting internally in the White House to try to assess options and what the U.S. would do. You know, one of the first indicators.
Okay, here's another one. This one's live in Israel. So I want to show you this. And Iran. So these are live strikes going right now in the Middle East. I don't know what just happened to my thing again. Sorry about that. Hopefully it's still playing. Unreal. Yeah, these strikes are happening in real time. Let me see if they got.
כי הדבר חשוב עכשיו, אחרי מכת הפתיחה, זה בעלת הברית שלנו, ארצות הברית. אנחנו חייבים אותה לצידנו. בהתקפה ובהגנה, יכולות האש שלה הן משמעותיות. יש לה נוסעות מטוסים, עם מטוסי קרב, עם חימושים משמעותיים, הם קרובים יותר, הם יכולים לגרום לנזק אדיר. זה לא טיסות של ארוכות כל כך כמו של צה"ל, 1,300 קילומטר ואף יותר, תלוי באיזו נקודה, ולכן אנחנו צריכים אותם להתקפה ולהגנה. אני מתאר לעצמי שבמהלך היום אנחנו נשמע קצת מהאמריקאים יותר, האם הם תמכו בשתיקה, כמובן אם הם יצטרפו, כן או לא, וגם שימי לב להזהרות שיוצאות מהאמריקאים, שאומרות לאיראנים לא לשגר לעבר מטרות שלהם, לא להכניס אותם לתוך
If you've just joined us, this is live in the Middle East. Israel has struck Iran. And I thought this was important enough to go live on this, because my concern is now with all of the riots going on, and if there are sleeper cells within the United States, this could be really nasty over the weekend.
אסור לשכוח, האיראנים בנו אותם ליום פקודה, לרגע שאנחנו תוקפים שם, נצטרך לעקוב ולראות כיצד זה.
וזה בדיוק יום הפקודה, יוסי.
בדיוק.
תודה רבה. אנחנו נמצאים תת-אלוף חיליק סופר, תת-אלוף מילואים חיליק סופר, תודה רבה שאתה איתנו, מסבירן פיקוד העורף. אני חושבת שיש הרבה מאוד ישראלים שיושבים עכשיו בממ"ד, מודאגים, שזו פעולה יזומה של צה"ל, שנועדה להסיר איום קיומי על מדינת ישראל, צריך לשמוח ברגע הזה, אבל להיות רגועים, אבל גם מוגנים ובטוחים.
כן, בהחלט, אבל חשוב לומר שברגע הזה אין צורך להיות במרחבים המוגנים בממ"דים, למעט מי שקיבל הנחיה מפורשת להיות בסמיכות למרחב מוגן. אבל חשוב לי לומר כמה מילים. האיום הזה הוא איום משמעותי ושונה ממה שהכרנו בעבר. מבחינת היקפי הירי, עוצמת הירי, זה לא דומה לירי הטילים של החות'ים מתימן, שטיל אחד בודד הפעיל הרבה מאוד מרחבי התראה. מדובר על כמות גדולה מאוד של טילים שירו לכיוון עורף מדינת ישראל. לכן קיימת חשיבות רבה מאוד להתכונן ולהיות מוכנים לקראת העימות הזה. אנחנו בפיקוד העורף יחד עם הרשויות המקומיות התכוננו לאיום הזה, ויש כמובן מספר הנחיות ששונות ממה שאנחנו רגילים בעבר, וחשוב שאני אדבר עליהן. ההנחיה הראשונה, אחרי שאנחנו שומעים את ההתראה, אנחנו נכנסים למרחב המוגן ולא יוצאים אחרי 10 דקות כמו שהתרגלנו בעבר. השהייה תהיה שהייה רצופה, והשחרור יהיה על ידי פיקוד העורף בהוראה מפורשת, או דרך היישומון, האפליקציה של פיקוד העורף, או על ידי הודעות בסלולר, או על ידי אמצעי התקשורת.
שמענו את ההתראה שנשמעת שונה, צריך לומר, כמו בגל התקיפות הקודם מאיראן, צריך להיכנס למרחב המוגן ולא לצאת אחרי 10 דקות.
נכון, יוצאים רק לאחר קבלת הנחיה מפורשת, כמו שאמרתי, גם בסלולר וגם באמצעי התקשורת. זה שינוי אחד שחשוב שנכיר אותו. השינוי השני זה כמובן מדיניות ההתגוננות המחמירה, שזה אומר אין יציאה ללימודים או כל פעילות חינוכית אחרת, זה אומר שאין התקהלויות והתכנסויות, ואין יציאה לעבודה, למעט עובדים במפעלים החיוניים. ובעיקרון, מי שלא צריך להיות בחוץ, שישאר במבנה, בבית.
You'll see there it's 4 o'clock in the morning or 5.
חשוב להקפיד על זה.
I don't know what time it is, no, they're sorry, but it's late still, and the sun is coming up.
הציבורי בתאום עם הרשויות המקומיות, כשהמדרג הראשון זה מה שאנחנו מכירים. מי שיש לו ממ"ד או ממ"ק או מקלט בבניין המשותף, זה הפתרון המיגוני הטוב ביותר. אגב, זה לרוב האוכלוסייה יש. למי שאין, שייצור קשר עם הרשות המקומית, ויבדוק היכן המיגון הטוב ביותר שהוא יכול להגיע אליו. זה יכול להיות או מקלט ציבורי, זה יכול להיות מקלט במוסדות חינוך, בתי ספר, וזה יכול להיות גם חניון תת-קרקעי שאושר על ידי פיקוד העורף והרשות המקומית. אבל לפני שאנחנו יוצאים לאותו מרחב מוגן ציבורי, חשוב מאוד לוודא עם הרשות שהוא פתוח והוא מוכן לקלוט אותנו, וחשוב לקחת ציוד בסיסי חיוני, כמו למשל מים, מזון שלא צריך קירור, טלפונים מטענים, תרופות אם צריך, לשהייה רצופה, שאנחנו לא נמצאים קרוב לבית, וחשוב שהציוד הזה ישמש אותנו לפחות לשעות הקרובות. חשוב לי לומר, האיום הוא איום ממשי ואיום שלא הכרנו בעבר. יחד עם זאת, יש לנו יכולת להתמודד עם האיום הזה. יש לנו הנחיות, שמירה על ההנחיות, זה שמירה על החיים. חשוב שנקפיד עליהם, ועוד דבר חשוב לומר. יש לנו מערכות הגנה אווירית ויש לנו כיפת ברזל, הן לא הרמטיות, הן לא היו הרמטיות בעבר, ובתרחיש הזה בוודאי ובוודאי. לכן יש חשיבות רבה להקשיב להנחיות, יהיו הנחיות שנפרסם אותן, שיכולות לומר, ההנחיה בסלולר, להיכנס למרחב מוגן, או יכול להיות גם שנגיד להיות סמוכים למרחב המוגן. וחשוב מאוד לפעול לפי ההנחיות האלה. כל מה שאני אומר נמצא גם באתר האינטרנט של פיקוד העורף בפורטל החירום, כמובן מוקד 104 שלנו פתוח, ואנחנו נמצאים בכל האולפנים, גם באולפן הזה, כדי גם לענות לשאלות של הציבור, של אזרחים, וכמובן גם לסייע להם להתמודד עם האיום הזה.
חיליק, תודה רבה. יוסי, אנחנו חוזרים אליך עם דיווחים על כך שהרמטכ"ל האיראני חוסל בגל התקיפות הראשון.
תראה, אני חושב שזה דיווח מאוד מאוד חשוב. אומר גורם ביטחוני בכיר, שבמכת הפתיחה הם כיוונו לרמטכ"ל ולמטכ"ל האיראני, יחד עם בכירים נוספים ועם מדענים, ולהערכה שלהם הם חוסלו בתקיפה הזו. אם כך, אז מדובר
I think this is important, right? I mean, no matter what side of the coin you're on right now, this is happening away from the United States. There could be a real problem here. In my opinion, I mean, I've seen a bunch like you, but at the same time, this is serious stuff tonight. We've got riots in the streets. They're planning huge riots for this weekend. And I'm not taking a dog in the fight right now, but at the same time, this could have implications that could, if there are silver cells in the United States, this could be the trigger that wakes those folks up. They just stopped a terrorist event. A guy was going to attack a college football game. And so think about that, where there are tens of thousands of students, and they had a couple of lone wolves that we can go in there. And I have said for many, many years, the worst type of tragedy that could occur since post 9/11. And a lot of these kids they weren't around in 9/11. They don't remember the shock. And so this is a global problem that could have home turf consequences. And so we need to pay attention to this as friends, neighbors, and quite frankly, Americans, because there's going to be a trigger of some point that potentially could push this to a level that for many of you have never seen in your lifetime. And it's no longer about marching in the city. It's about marching in that city and then having a lone wolf with an AK-47 start mowing people down, just like the guy did in New Orleans. So this is, in my thought process, thinking from a criminal behavior analysis aspect, this is the type of trigger that could trigger lone wolves within the United States. And that is not a good situation for any of us to be thinking about and or to be in. So we need to pay attention to what's going on over there to better safeguard, to better control our own environments and keeping ourselves safe over here.
כן, אז הצטברות של דברים מנסים להסביר בצבא. הן הפריצה וניסיונות הפריצה של אותם מדענים לפצצה, והן ההבנה שהגיע הרגע והמערכות מקוילות, ואולי גם העובדה, כפי שהזכרתם את חיזבאללה, שהוא נמצא בנקודה מאוד נמוכה, דבר שחששו ממנו, שאם יתקפו את מתקני הגרעין, אז ייפתח אותו פרוקסי צפוני. אבל מספר עדכונים שצריך לתת מהדקה האחרונה, אנחנו מבינים שנשלחו צווי 8 רבים לאלפי משרתי מילואים ברחבי הארץ, אגב, לא רק בצבא, משרתי מילואים חיוניים, אלא גם במשטרה ובגורמי ההצלה.
Israel has attacked Iran, and this is live news coverage in Israel.
אני שומעת דיווח לפיו, תאמר אם זה נכון, לפיו גם מי שנמצא כבר בפטור קיבל קריאה לצו 8?
אנחנו מקבלים דיווחים גם כאלה, צריך רגע להבין לאילו מערכים, יש את המערכים של פיקוד העורף, מערכים רלוונטיים ואחרים, כשהאמירה עכשיו היא מה שנקרא אולי בשפה הכי פשוטה, אזעקת אמת. אנחנו נמצאים ברגעים מכריעים שצה"ל יוצא למבצע, אולי הם כל המבצעים שלא ראינו כמותו, לא בהיקפים של מכת הפתיחה. שימי לב, גוברים כפי שאמר גורם ביטחוני, הסיכויים שרמטכ"ל איראן חוסל, אלו מילים שלא היינו מעלים על הדעת שאפשר להגיד, ואיתו גם בכירים רבים במטכ"ל שלו, גם מתקני הגרעין, לפחות חלקם מופצצים ברגעים אלו, גם בנתנז, גם באספהאן, וגם דיווחים ראשונים, צריך לבדוק אותם עוד בפורדו, כלומר, אותם מילים שאנחנו חשבנו שאמורים להיות מוגנים על ידי כל הפרוקסי וכל מערכות ההגנה האוויריות, אגב, שהושמדו באוקטובר האחרון, עכשיו מותקפים. זו מכת פתיחה גדולה, רחבת היקף. את האימונים ואת התרגולים שלה שמענו היטב בשבועות האחרונים, לא יכולנו להגיד מה אנחנו שומעים, חלק מההתארגנויות עד עכשיו אנחנו לא בדיוק יכולים להגיד, אבל שימי לב למה קורה כאן עכשיו. זו לא עוד תרגיל, זה לא עוד סבב, זה מבצע עם כלבי, או כמו שיוסי היטיב להגדיר, זו מערכה של ממש.
כן, מלחמה מול איראן, אנחנו נמצאים במלחמה הזאת כבר 1.5 שנה, אבל עכשיו היא מקבלת באמת תוקף נוסף. יוסי, כן.
אני חושב שאפשר לעדכן שגל נוסף של תקיפות...
איזה מספר של גל אנחנו ללילה הזה?
אני חושב שהשנית, אם אנחנו מתייחסים למכת הפתיחה, זאת אומרת, הרי איראן מדינה גדולה, אנחנו לא יכולים לספור כל הטלה של מטוס, אבל אני חושב שאנחנו נראה רצף של תקיפות. נדגיש, זה אירוע מאוד מאוד מורכב, הסיפור הזה, זה מחייב תדלוק בדרך, זה לא להתרומם מעל מטולה בביירות, אגב, אפילו ממקומות, אתה יכול לתקוף מ-40 קילומטר, אתה יכול לעמוד בשטח מדינת ישראל ולתקוף בדרום לבנון באזורים שאתה רוצה, אפילו לא לחצות את הקו. איראן זה אירוע מורכב, בעיקר מה שמורכב זה סיפור של התדלוק.
בגלל המרחק הרב.
בגלל המרחק הרב, זאת אומרת, זה לא החות'ים, הם מחזיקים חיל האוויר, ואני מתאר לעצמי שיהיו גם אתגרים באוויר, ואנחנו נשמע על קרבות אוויר-אוויר, והפגיעה, מלבד, אנחנו מדברים על פגיעה במתקני הגרעין, אנחנו מדברים על פגיעה במתקנים האסטרטגיים של איראן, אנחנו מדברים על פגיעה במערכות ההגנה האוויריות, במקמים שלהם, ובצמרת הצבאית של הארגון. מאוד יכול להיות, את זה אנחנו לא יודעים, צריך לראות אם זה יוצא משם, האם ישראל הולכת, מה שנקרא, גם על המשטר ועל בכירים במשטר, צריך לראות האם גם זה בסל המטרות. נכון עכשיו, לפחות ממה שצה"ל מדווח, המטרות הן צבאיות, אבל הן מאוד מאוד מגוונות, שהן נועדו גם לפגוע במתקני הגרעין, אבל גם לשבש את יכולות התקיפה מנגד של האיראנים כמשמעותיות, ואני מקווה מאוד שהם סיכלו חלק ניכר מהם, כי היכולות של האיראנים הם בהיקפים הרבה יותר...
Wow, look at all that. That's coming in. That's incoming. That's incoming to Israel. Wow. Holy cow, guys, look at this.
הנחיות כאלה מחמירות.
Holy
כדאי מאוד
smokes.
ורצוי מאוד להקשיב. חשנו בתקופה האחרונה איזושהי קצת שאננות, אתה יודע, תופעות של אומנים, אביב גפן ואחרים, שאפשר להמשיך. לא דומה. זה אירוע לא דומה לחלוטין. אני ממליץ לכולם להקשיב קשב רב למה שחיליק אומר.
כן, אז אנחנו נעשה זאת עכשיו. תת-אלוף במילואים חיליק סופר, מסבירן פיקוד העורף. דבר ראשון, נרגיע את הצופים בבית. אנחנו בפעולה חשובה מאוד של צבא ההגנה לישראל, שנועדה להסיר איום קיומי על מדינת ישראל.
Yeah, I don't know if that was incoming to Iran or incoming to
אנחנו שולחים את התקופה הזאת באופן בטוח עד כמה שאפשר.
כן, קודם כל אני אומר שאנחנו, יש איום ממשי ומשמעותי, ודיברנו על גם היקפי הירי, מה שלא חווינו בעבר, אבל חשוב לומר לכל האזרחים, יש ביכולתנו להתמודד בהתגוננות האזרחית שלנו. זה חוץ מהפעילות ההתקפית של חיל האוויר, שפוגעים גם, אני מניח, בחלק גדול גם מהמשגרים ומטילים, יש לנו גם את שכבה ההגנה האווירית על כל השכבות שלה וכיפת ברזל, אבל אנחנו יודעים שהיא לא הרמטית, ולכן פה נכנס הפעולות הפשוטות של האזרח. קודם כל ברמת המוכנות עכשיו, בזמן הזה, להכין את המרחב המוגן מי שלא הכין, להכין את החפצים הדרושים, את הפנס, את המים, הדברים הפשוטים האלה, וכמובן לבחור את המרחב המוגן מי שלא עשה את זה, ואני אדבר גם על המרחב המוגן.
אז אני חושבת שיש אנשים רבים, אני רואה את זה גם ככה קצת בקבוצות, אנשים רבים שבמשך שנה וחצי, או קצת יותר אפילו, מתגוננים בחדר המדרגות, ואומרים, אם הלילה יש משהו חמור יותר, האם צריך להתגונן במרחב אולי ציבורי, שהוא מוגן.
And welcome
כמו שאמרנו,
all of our friends.
כמו שאנחנו מכירים, זה הממ"ד, הממ"ק או המקלט.
Israel has struck Iran and it has created this live news coverage in the Middle East. I wanted to cover it here because there's enough chaos going on in the protests, but this could change all of that over the next couple of days. If you're just joining us, Nancy and Di, USMC mom, God bless you. Let's pray that this doesn't pull us into craziness. But my concern here is in the United States. I can guarantee you all the fusion centers have been activated in the United States, including the National Terrorism Center. There are 24 of those around the United States. They have all been activated, I guarantee it. Because they are now worried that this event could trigger sleeper cells to take off in the United States. And so we need to be very aware of large crowds, events such as that over the next week or so, because we don't know how unstable this is going to get. We just got this information. This is live in Tel Aviv right now. It's like they just put up 4 more pictures. And I think that's incoming in the top left-hand corner. What do you guys think? I think Iran is on the right and Israel is incoming on the left, or this was earlier when they were making the strikes.
והכי הכי חשוב, לא להיות בשטחים פתוחים. שטח פתוח זה המקום הכי מסוכן, גם לא בשעה הזאת שרוב האנשים, וגם מי שזה לא חיוני או לא נחוץ להגיע לבית חולים או לטיפול כזה או אחר, שיהיה בבית, במבנה. גם אם אין התראה וגם אם לא צריך להיות במרחב המוגן, שיהיה בתוך הבית, בתוך מבנה, זה נותן גם מענה להגנה.
כן, תודה רבה, תת-אלוף המילואים חיליק סופר. מינון שלום מתחת כתבנו הצבאי, אנחנו יודעים לומר שהותקפו מטרות של צבא איראן, אנחנו יודעים לומר אילו מטרות בדיוק הותקפו?
כן, אנחנו מבינים שבמכת הפתיחה ניסו ללכת על אותם עורקים ראשיים ולהתחיל במלאכה המורכבת, ואני אנסה להסביר. ראשית, מפקדות, מקומות שמהם מנהלים את המערכה, הן רמטכ"ל איראן שגוברים הסיכויים שחוסל והצמרת הצבאית שאמורה להוביל את המתקפות. אגב, מקביל מאוד למה שהיה בימים הראשונים של מבצע חיצי הצפון בלבנון. ראשית הולכים על המפקדות, הולכים על הראש של הבכירים, אבל מתחילים לפרק לאט לאט גם את הסכנה המיידית. והסכנה המיידית בעצם זה בורות ואתרי שיגור של טילים בליסטיים, ובמקביל אתרי הגרעין. אותם רכיבים שאפשר להכניס מתחת לפני הקרקע, שאפשר לנסות למגן, להחליף מיקומים, מדענים שאמורים לעבור ממקום למקום, אלו הדברים שרוצים להשמיד בטרם הם ייעלמו מתחת לרדאר, ואומרים לנו גורמים צבאיים, הם ייעלמו מתחת לרדאר בכל יום שעובר, כי האיראנים הבינו שהם נמצאים תחת סכנה. אבל לצד הפעילות הגלויה של צה"ל, צריך להגיד היום, גם במהלך האירוע הזה מתרחש אירוע של המוסד, והוא לא פחות משמעותי, הוא לא פחות קריטי, שפוגע גם במערך הטילים האסטרטגי וגם ביכולות ההגנה האוויריות. שורה ארוכה של מבצעי סיכול חשאיים שהתחילו עוד הרבה לפני המלחמה, לא יכולנו ועליהם אנחנו עדיין לא יכולים לדבר. מה שאנחנו מקבלים כרגע להגיד זה ממש קצה של קרחון, אבל הוא מראה עד כמה ישראל נערכה ליום הזה, ועד כמה היא מבינה שיש כאן הזדמנות על חזור. כשישראל עולה בתחילת המתקפה, הוא גם פונה הוא אומר להם כך, הוא אומר להם,
some of these other channels to find out exactly what the target sets were and then kind of put the real information in the chat so everybody is on the same page here. Yeah, it does look like those are targets in Iran.
אלו שאיפות מאוד מאוד גדולות, אבל הם מבינים שהמשטר הזה, לפי הערכות של הגורמים הצבאיים, בעצם אולי נשען על היכולות הצבאיות ועל הטלת אימה ומורא, בין היתר גם על ישראל, ואולי הדבר הזה יכול לשבור אותו.
כן, בהחלט, גם את העם האיראני צריך לשחרר מהקלגסים של משמרות המהפכה. תודה רבה. אנחנו רוצים לצרף את פרשננו לענייני ערבים, ברוך ידיד. ברוך, איך זה נראה משם?
כן, אפשר לסווג את הדיווחים לשורה משמעותית רחבה של תקיפות, גם נגד אתרי גרעין וצבא, בין השאר בנתנז, בפורדו, באספהאן, בקרמנשה, במקומות נוספים שבהם יש או תעשיית טילים מפותחת, או הם חלק משרשרת של תעשיית הגרעין, וגם על פי דיווחים כמובן לא רשמיים באיראן, גם על פגיעה משמעותית בצמרת, בין השאר הדיווחים, ואנחנו לא מצליחים לאמת אותם, אבל על פגיעה אולי אפילו חיסול של רמטכ"ל איראן, מוחמד בקרי, של חוסיין סלמי, מפקד משמרות המהפכה. יש דיווח גם על פגיעה אפשרית בעלי שהמכני, מדובר באחד היועצים המובילים, גם אפילו במפקד חיל האוויר התעופה והחלל חאג' אמיר עליזאדה, שורה ארוכה. בינתיים אנחנו מדווחים כבר על גל שני של תקיפות בכל היעדים האלו. יש עדיין דיווחים על כך שגם מעל שמי עיראק נשמעים פיצוצים. על פי הדיווחים כנראה זה מטוסים שמשגרים מהמרחב הזה העיראקי. חמינאי על פי חלק מהדיווחים הוא עבר למקום בטוח, לקראת אולי כבר החלה ישיבת חירום של ההנהגה הביטחונית האיראנית. הדיווחים מדברים גם על פגיעה באתרי תעופה, מקאמים. בין השאר אנחנו יודעים לומר שהופסקה כל הפעילות האווירית משדה התעופה חומייני. יש דיווח די מוקדם על פגיעה בשלושה מתחמי מגורים של קצונה בכירה ממש בלב טהרן. אולי זה מתיישב עם הדיווחים על פגיעה בבכירים של הצמרת הביטחונית האיראנית. ולמה כל זה קורה? אז שמענו את ראש הממשלה על כך שאיראן עשתה דברים שהיא לא עשתה בעבר. נזכיר בעניין הזה את הדיווח המשמעותי מאוד של סבא, הדיווח מלפני מספר ימים על כך שאיראן מחזיקה למעלה מ-400 קילו של אורניום 60%. היום קבע סבא שאיראן הפרה את התחייבויותיה. האיראנים כבר היום הודיעו על התגובה שלהם. להעשיר באתר נוסף. שתיים, גם לשדרג בפורדו את הצנטריפוגות מדור הישן לדור מספר 6 המתקדם. זו הדרך שבה איראן הגיבה לתביעה של סוכנות הבינלאומית לאנרגיה אטומית סבא. כל זה קורה כאשר התקשורת הערבית לסוגיה מדגישה מפי מקורות אמריקאים על כך שארצות הברית איננה שותפה. בין השאר זה אולי גם נועד כדי שלא למנוע את סבב השיחות הצפוי הקרוב מספר 6 ביום ראשון הקרוב בעומאן בין האמריקאים לאיראנים. עכשיו, אנחנו מדברים על תקיפה רחבה מאוד באתרים רבים באיראן, כאילו דיווחנו על עוד תקיפה בלבנון, סוריה, עזה. זה לחלוטין הרבה יותר רחב, ממושך מהתקיפות שראינו כבר שניים בעבר הלא רחוק של ישראל על אתרים באיראן. ואנחנו יכולים להבין, יש דיווחים על כך שמטוסי קרב המריאו מאחד משדות התעופה בסמוך לטהרן, כנראה כדי להתעמת עם חיל האוויר, גם על מערכות הגנה אווירית שהופעלו. על פי כמה דיווחים, האיראנים כבר אתמול הודיעו, למשל חוסן סלמי, שכעת מדווח שכנראה חוסל, נגיב בין השאר בשיגור של טילים בליסטיים במאות. כך אמר סלמי לפני פחות מיום אחד, בהינתן התקפה ישראלית, וזו אנחנו רואים עם כלבי יקום. ההתקפה הזו כבר מגיעה כנראה עכשיו לשלב 2, גל שני של תקיפות.
כן, ברוך. אני רוצה לשאול, עד כמה האיראנים היו מופתעים? מכיוון שהיה שיח נרחב על סוגיית התקיפה באיראן, ובכל זאת היו גם אולי כמה דברים שניסו להסיח את הדעת, החתונה של בנו של ראש הממשלה, השיחות כמובן עם ארצות הברית.
Definitely end times, doesn't it feel like that?
תראי, הדיווחים ביממה האחרונה, לפי דעתי, הבהירו לאיראנים שזה קרוב. דיווחו גורמי צבא איראנים גם על תרגילים. הם תמיד נוהגים לומר שאלו תרגילים חלק ממערך התרגילים השגרתי, אבל כנראה שהיה מדובר בתרגילים שאינם חלק מהשגרה. הם דיווחו על ג'הוזיה, על כוננות על בכל המערכים, כך שאני מניח שהם לא הופתעו.
All right, hang in there, guys. All right, hang on. I lost the, I don't know what's going on with the computer, the confuser here. Let me try to find this feed again. Sorry. Appreciate your patience. That's like the 50th time that's happened, and I don't understand that.
But that's
So
the only way you can ever be in those. This is what happens. This is the fog of war, guys.
Right now,
break
we're
down,
in the fog
systems
of war.
go into disorder.
Did the IRGC take down Charlie's mic?
Yeah. You don't know who's
Cuts
talking.
force.
There's a lot of interest, I think, that this could be a Ukraine war killer out of this entire thing, where it's going to be changes the entire dynamics of the war in Ukraine may come to a rapid close here based off of this whole thing, which also is a dynamic of the outcomes from these strikes that are happening, which is, maybe there's some immediate positives that come from that because of the concern that I think so many of us had about that. Democrats will shout and scream and say, oh my gosh, no, we are giving too much power again to Russia and everything else. It's going to be a very interesting outcome. But I do think a net positive of this is perhaps it does close that window. Perhaps it does bring Russia to the table. Perhaps it does bring some working together to ensure that there is peace in the Middle East. But who knows?
You guys tell me who you want to watch. I'm back to
חלקם ליפול פה, יהיה קושי רב למערכת, ופה צריך לעשות תיאום ציפיות.
If you want to watch Charlie Kirk, I'll go over there, or would you rather watch live from Middle East?
כבדים מבלי להבהיל, אלא לעשות תיאום ציפיות, ולכן ההנחיות של פיקוד העורף מחמירות. אז אם איראן אחרי התקיפות שלנו היא מבינה שהדבר שהיא צריכה זה לייצר הרבה יותר טילים, אז היא ניסתה לעשות את זה בצורה, מה שנקרא חרושתית, בהיקפים גדולים.
אני חושבת שלכולם זה היה ברור, לכל מי שעיניו בראשו, שהזמן הזה של משא ומתן עם ארצות הברית נועד כדי להגביר את יכולת הייצור.
גם יכולת הייצור וגם הסיפור של הגרעין. ודבר שלישי, הם ראו באגף המודיעין עד כמה השיתוף פעולה שלהם עם חמאס התהדק. היה לפני 7 באוקטובר, גם תוך כדי, עד כמה חמאס זקוק לכסף שלהם, עד כמה הם מתדלקים אותו. ראינו, דיברנו על זה קודם, עד כמה הם הכניסו פנימה מרגלים כדי להשיג מודיעין על ישראל. זאת אומרת, הם ניהלו מערכה מאוד מאוד דרמטית, ואחרי 7 באוקטובר אנחנו לא יכולים רק לעסוק באמירות, אלא גם
יוסי, בוא נשמע את דברי הרמטכ"ל אייל זמיר, הנה.
אזרחי ישראל,
to follow, of course, alone saying it's possible that there may be some sort of second wave. We're also getting some breaking news from the news wires. Christina, I know we have to hit that commercial break. We'll be back in a moment.
We'll be back in just a moment.
What do you guys think so far? This is crazy. So let me get back here to Israel.
נדרש מאיתנו בעת הזו לבחור בין רוצה לפגוע בנו בחזרה. הספיגה צפויה להיות שונה מזו שהורגלנו אליה. צה"ל נערך למתן הגנה מרבית לעורף הישראלי, ואני קורא לכם לגלות אחריות אישית, משפחתית וקהילתית ולהישמע להוראות. אל המבצע אליו יצאנו הלילה נערכנו זמן רב. מדובר בהיערכות חסרת תקדים של כלל הזרועות והאגפים שהגיעה לבשלות אל מול איום אמיתי וממשי. בעת הזו אני מבקש בשמכם לחזק את חיילי צה"ל וכוחות הביטחון אשר פועלים בנחישות והתמדה בזירות קרובות ורחוקות מאוד. הם מגנים בגופם ובנפשם על כל אחד ואחת מאיתנו. אנחנו מגייסים עשרות אלפי חיילים ונערכים בכל הגבולות.
Okay, now I think somebody's messing with me. Okay. Can everybody hear me in the stream, in the chat? That is like the third time I have been knocked off the air here. I don't know what's going on. But that said, we'll keep going. Sorry about that. I do apologize.
Seeing that Israel has now had these targeted attacks in Iran, what's your immediate take as you heard this news hit the airwaves?
Right. Always a pleasure to be on, of course. I guess the time is finally here. Something a lot of us Middle East analysts have been waiting on, right? Anticipating for, say, over a decade.
Well, I wonder if
nevertheless, I think
entity.
I've heard two Israeli officials say
that was like
say these
3
words,
times within
over the last couple
I've been on
hours
48
that
minutes.
they've reached the point of no return.
And I just I was only going to do a couple
saying
hours
that they
just
had
to
to
bring
act.
everybody
They
up
were
to
compelled
speed.
to act by Iran.
The fact that this is
So
keeps
we are
going
at this
is
point.
really
So
interesting.
now what we're observing, or what I'm observing, is this flood of information. A lot of it, what you've just mentioned. A lot of military targets have been reportedly struck, including nuclear sites. It also wouldn't surprise me that if Israel targeted
and
the IRGCs or Iran's
the Twitter feed is spinning.
Of Iran's
You guys
military
have any other
strike,
problems
at
with
least
that?
an
I'm
opening
on the
strike.
other
So
Fox
still,
channel.
it's a fluid situation. There's a lot going on.
And it's
I think
spinning.
this is just the beginning of unfortunately, a long campaign that we will be observing over the next few days.
So, Joe, one thing that we always keep an eye on here is the idea of Iran and Israel going after each other directly instead of them fighting through the proxies, which is what we had typically seen. But now this is the third such instance. of Israel and Iran fighting directly with each other. Where do we go from here, and what bellwethers are you watching for to indicate how escalatory today is, if it is going to be escalatory at all? Sometimes, and we've been covering this now day in and day out since October 7th, 2023, sometimes an attack happens and then the entity that was attacked feels that that attack rises to the level where a response is needed. From what we've learned about this attack so far today, does it feel like Iran is going to feel like a response militarily is warranted?
Right. I think so. The Iranians have actually, they've signaled, they've conveyed this message of a response if Israel were to attack its nuclear facilities, which they reportedly have already overnight, over the last few hours. So I think the Iranians will react, will respond against Israel. Now, how will they respond, right, is the big question. To what extent will they respond? If this would have happened, let's say 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I would have been very concerned about groups like Hezbollah, for example, or Palestinian armed groups in Gaza, of course, the Houthis, and then Syria as well. In Syria, I would have been very concerned about strikes or rather attacks emanating from there. Reason being is that many groups that operate in these areas, are linked to Iran, right? Or they're either a part of their network of proxies or they're clients of Iran. But what we have observed over the last 2 years, or about rather a year and a half, a little bit more than a year and a half, is that these proxies have been degraded significantly, right? So Iran's insurance card, which was really Hezbollah more than anything, Hezbollah has suffered significantly, right? Especially last year during the war. So, but I still think we'll see, it's very possible we'll see strikes from proxy groups, namely Hezbollah, namely the Houthis, perhaps from Iraq as well, in coordination with Iran. But what will Iran do is the big question, right? But I do suspect what we saw in April last year, what we saw in October, it'd be something similar. But I think the greatest concern, more than anything, from the Israelis is a larger attack, right? A sustained attack, a prolonged attack against Israeli cities, Israeli communities. The air defense systems that they have can only take so much, and it's not, and it doesn't deflect or destroy 100% of incoming missiles or incoming drones. So some will get through, and that happened last year. We observed it on multiple occasions. So there's a lot of threats. I think Iran right now, more than anything, it's assessing the damage and assessing how they will respond. But at the end of the day, I do think Iran will respond militarily. And it's likely as well that they'll use their proxies in the region to respond against Israel.
And so we do just have some breaking news updates as well, Joe. I want to put this up on folks' screen. This has been the news that we've been waiting on. This is now confirmed by our partners there at Reuters, that the Iranian state media has confirmed the killing of the Revolutionary Guard Chief Salami there in this Israeli strike as well. So if you are not aware of what we're talking about here, Iranian state television says that the head of Iran's paramilitary Revolutionary Guard, General Hossein Salami, has been now feared dead in that attack. This is on top of one other guard official, as well as 2 nuclear scientists who have also been feared dead. So again, just some background information. Iran's Revolutionary Guard was created in 1979 after the Islamic Revolution and is one of the main power centers within the country's theocracy. Joe, this is the breaking news that we've been talking about. You're there at the Foundation of Defensive Democracies. What's your response to this now being confirmed officially?
Right. This is a significant elimination by the Israelis. Hossein Salami is he's the commander of the Revolutionary Guard. So this isn't some foot soldier, right? Salami has been at the center of many threats and many actions against Israel over the last few years. For example, Salami hinted about 2 or 3 years ago that Iran was supporting Palestinian terrorist groups in the West Bank, not only supporting them, but arming them as well to carry out attacks against Israeli targets, against Israeli civilians, against IDF troops. So the elimination of Salami it's a big deal, and I'm not surprised that the Israelis went after the upper echelons, right? The top tier members of the IRGC, for example. I suspect we will hear more eliminations throughout the night. That's definitely possible. Again, the Israelis, I think their calculus here, their strategy, at least in the opening blow of this attack, was to catch the Iranians off guard. Not only catch them off guard, but eliminate a significant percentage or a significant portion of their leadership. And I think they may have done that tonight. At least seemingly, it appears they did. Of course, there's still many more commanders and top members of the IRGC.
About ramping down Iran's nuclear program. That's something that we've been following for a while because there's been 5 meetings that have taken place. A 6th meeting was expected to happen this weekend. By the way, to catch everybody up, the point of these meetings is basically the U.S. is trying to negotiate a path toward Iran getting rid of their nuclear program. That way they don't make any progress toward actually making a nuclear weapon. As I mentioned, the 6th round was supposed to be on Sunday. Do we have any idea what kind of implications
if I go
this
down,
has
don't
on that
worry about
meeting
it,
at this
guys. You
point? I
guys,
mean, does something like this mean that
I
that
was
meeting
allowed to
could
be
be
up here
off
for
the
a couple
table?
hours.
Have we heard anything?
I
When do we
wanted
expect to hear
everybody to
anything?
make sure you're aware of what's going on.
I
My
suspect,
concern, just
as the
my thought
Israelis have said
process,
already,
if you're just joining with us,
they are attempting
here
to
is
eliminate Iran's nuclear
how is
project.
this going to affect maybe
Something
those
like
sleeper
this
cells that
doesn't
we
take
keep hearing
it
about
takes
here in the
days.
United
All right,
States?
this isn't
And
one type of
doesn't kick them
one-day type
off
of
now this
strike thing.
weekend with this attack
So I
on
highly
the
doubt
Iranian
there's
regime.
gonna be a meeting on
And
Sunday.
so
I'd be
we'll
very
see.
surprised,
But
just because of
personally, I would not be in
what's
a
happening now. And
large
just to be
crowd
frank,
down
is
in LA or
potentially
any
a
place for
war
that
here.
matter.
I think that's
These
the biggest
kids that are going
concern,
to
a
be
regional
stepping out.
war. Now we
Thank you, Laura.
understand,
You're so kind.
we know that Iran has said
into these
before,
large
has
crowds.
threatened
Did
to launch
you say there are
attacks
24 sleeper
against
cells? Could you please?
regional countries in the region.
There are
As
24
well, if
terrorism
Israel strikes
centers
its facilities,
in
or the
major
Iran's nuclear facilities.
terrorism
So,
centers in the United
again,
States.
there's a lot of
And
what ifs here,
there
right?
are
And
multiple
that's the big thing, I
sleeper
think, more than
cells
anything.
in the
But
United
what
States.
I'm pretty certain about is that
Mark
any
my
meeting,
words.
right,
You
that
guys have
was
been
scheduled
following
for
me for
Sunday
4 years,
isn't
and I'm
probably going
batting
to
1,000.
happen. And I think
So I know
the
for a
United
fact
States, I think
from
Israel
inside sources,
knew
they're
for
just
some
waiting
days
to
now that
have
Iran was
an
heading
opportunity to do what they got
into
to do.
a
So we need to
direction
be
that they
vigilant,
did not want.
and we
I think
just need
Israel
to. If you see
obviously took
something,
the
say
action, made
something.
the
As
decision
Matt
to
Investigations
attack
said here a little
Iran's
bit ago.
nuclear facilities. So the meeting between the United States and Iran, I think it's likely going to be off. Just because of the attack, and it's likely these attacks or this possible shooting war between Israel and Iran is likely going to continue for the next few days.
I'm glad you brought that up because as we replay the moment that this all happened there in Tehran, you talked about the fact that you believe that Israel saw a direction that Iran was heading and wasn't ready to go in that direction along with them. We just got confirmation from the Associated Press as well, saying that an official spoke to them under the condition of anonymity because he's not allowed to speak on the record, but said that an Israeli security officer says that Netanyahu and other top officials decided Monday that this attack and operation would start today. Does it surprise you that this is what the scale of it happened, being that they've been preparing for this for the last 5 days?
No, not a surprise. I think the United States and Israel at least I suspect it, have been in close coordination here. I mean, listen, this is a significant event, all right? This absolutely affects the United States. I mean, we've heard, right, over the last 48 hours or so, embassies being evacuated in the region, right? Or rather, some personnel being evacuated in the region, whether it's in Kuwait, Bahrain, and other places. So there's coordination. And also, you've heard from officials as well, American officials, Israeli officials, about some, I wouldn't say negative comments about Iran and its nuclear and the negotiations, but you could, if you look back at it, you could tell something was going on, especially the last few days, just due to the comments from these officials. So again, it doesn't surprise me. It's unfortunate that this couldn't have been negotiated, right, through political means, that it had to reach this kinetic action that we're seeing by the Israelis. However, this isn't, again, I want to stress this. This can't be, these strikes, it's highly unlikely that they're just going to stop tonight. This is a campaign that's going to go on for more than a day or more than 2 days. And then again, the big thing too, again, we talked about it earlier, how is Iran going to respond here? What kind of damage can Iran do?
I'm in the middle of
a
show real fast.
Do against Israel.
Yeah,
and I think that
cool.
can factor in how this war turns, or rather how this conflict right now goes. So again, a lot more questions than answers, but I do expect things to continue, this campaign to continue for the next days.
So the Israel-Hamas war, Joe, we cover every day the latest on the conflict. We always talk about the idea that Hamas is funded by Iran, how much they're funding Iran amid this most recent iteration of the war. I think we still don't exactly know just how much of a connection there is, presumably less of a connection between Hamas proper and the exterior forces that might be outside of the enclave. Something like this, though, what kind of impact does it have on Gaza and the future of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Right. And I sort of touched on it earlier. But if this was, again, 3 or 4 years ago, I would have been very concerned about a retaliatory act from Gaza, right? Because we know that Iran has clients there. It has and we know, as you said, Hamas, but of course there's Palestinian Islamic Jihad, there's other groups. However, these organizations have been weakened significantly, all right, over the last year and a half, a little more than the last year and a half of conflict. So they don't have the firepower, all right, that they used to before the war. Okay, so that's a positive thing for Israel. They don't have to worry nearly as much about a significant attack from Gaza, right? There could be something, all right. When I say something, I mean I do suspect that Hamas, perhaps Palestinian Islamic Jihad, still have a few long-range rockets that could reach areas such as Tel Aviv or
Joey Little says hi to everybody.
But it wouldn't be a sustained or prolonged attack like we've seen in previous years from the Gaza Strip. So I think that's a positive thing for the Israelis. But as I touched on before, Hezbollah is still there in Lebanon. It hasn't gone anywhere. I think they still have a lot of firepower there, even after the war. So if I were to choose, let's say, a region, right, that I would be concerned, besides Iran, of course, that I would be concerned where a lot of, let's say, rockets, missiles, and other firepower could hit Israel, it would be from Lebanon more than anything. And again, like I said earlier, Hezbollah is always Iran's insurance card if Iran were to be attacked by the Israelis. Of course, we know Hezbollah has been weakened, but they're still around. So I suspect Iran will activate Hezbollah to resume attacks against Israel. But I mean, that's not a for sure thing. But there's a lot on the table right now. A lot of what ifs, like I said earlier. But out of all the arenas, I'm not so much concerned about Gaza than I am Lebanon, for example, or Yemen because of the Houthis, or the Iraq because of the Iraqi militias. And of course, Iran. So a lot on the table here. We just have to see how Iran decides to respond.
And as you're talking about the wider region as well, Joe, we do know that there have been now reports official there by Iraq's Ministry of Transportation announcing a temporary closure of Iraqi airspace and a complete suspension of air traffic as well. We've seen this across the region. Is this an expected response when there are some of these attacks happening there, the neighboring countries taking heed and taking a moment to step back, clear their airspace in case of an attack?
Yes, absolutely. I believe we saw the same thing last year in April and October. I think the Iraqis and other countries in the region, they expect a significant Iranian response. All right. So missiles, right? The ballistic missiles, drones fired from Iran are going to go through their airspace, right? Through Iraqi airspace, for example, maybe from Jordanian airspace as well. So I think we're going to see a lot of action. It's very possible over the next hours from Iran. And then conversely, we'll see the Israelis attempting to deflect or shoot down what is fired from Iran, whether it be, again, drones or ballistic missiles. But again, like we observed last year, they don't get everything, all right? So their damage can be done. It just depends a lot on how many projectiles, right, the Iranians or maybe their proxies fire at Israel. Again, I think the goal here or the strategy for the Iranians and the greater axis is to overwhelm Israel's air defense system. Right? I think that's the goal. So we may see a lot of, again, drones, ballistic missiles, and other projectiles fired at Israel actually at the same time from different fronts. So I think this is what has the Israelis quite concerned over the next hours.
And so, again, we've been on top of this breaking news here alongside with us from the Foundation of the Defense of Democracies, Joe Truzman, helping us to make sense of this breaking news that's coming there out of the region. Of course, the biggest thing being that Israel has had some targeted attacks there on Tehran. We're seeing and we're just expecting to see as this could be more rounds coming as well. So we'll continue to keep our eyes on this here on Live Now from Fox. Joe, we appreciate your time as always.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to slide away for a quick
Well,
2-minute
so
commercial
far,
break. On the other side of that, though, we're going
it
to
looks
continue
like all
on talking about
military
the region, leaving you with a
targets
shot there as the sun is
certainly
beginning to
is
rise there in Jerusalem as well.
concerning.
We're going to stay
I
right
mean,
here on
I
top
think
of
we
this
can
breaking
all
news.
agree on
New
that piece of the
information
puzzle,
continuing
whether
to
you're,
come out. Stay with us on Live
one
Now.
political persuasion or another. This is going to impact all of us potentially. If it keeps going crazy, even in a different direction. My feeling would be, and if my thought process is, if this is enough for them to kick off waking up sleeper cells here, potentially in the United States, then this could be the trigger that does that across the U.S. So we need to pay attention to that. Large plan, or go out, just be aware, pay attention. Large crowds would not be a good idea this coming weekend, personally. It just wouldn't be a good idea to go to the protest or anything like that, because those are potentially soft targets. And, that's the kind of thing you don't want to do. One of my good friends, her employees in San Bernardino, she was in the building. Remember when that guy attacked the office in San Bernardino and killed 13 employees of the county of San Bernardino? And those were her people. So, you just don't know. Yeah, this is a great, great question. What about the parade in DC? That's a great question. I think this can change those dynamics personally. And I think the the staff or Secret Service is going to be telling everybody, hey, this is not good and we need to pay attention. So I think the security threat level just went up. That's my personal opinion. Then that is only my opinion. It doesn't necessarily mean that something's going to happen. But things are cooking tonight.
As Israel has made targeted attacks on Iran. Again, continuing this conversation that we've been having for the last 2 hours, bringing back in my colleague Austin Westfall, as well as Dr. Alon Bernstein. Austin, I'm going to toss to you now.
Yeah, really, we've been away from Alon now for about 30 minutes time. By the way, Alon is a great resource for anybody who wants to follow him on his personal YouTube channel. Type in Dr. Alon Bernstein. He provides his own analysis of the Middle East. He uploads regularly. Feel free to give him a follow. We need to talk about what's happened in the last half hour. Alon has the ability to not only read everything in English, but he's also keeping an eye for breaking news from outlets in Arabic and in Hebrew. Alon, what's caught your attention in the past half hour?
Thank you, Austin and Christina. Good to see you. Okay, there's a lot of developments in the last half an hour that are actually confirming some of the things that we said before and shedding a bit of a different light on some of the others. First of all, the Iranian state TV is confirming a lot of those assassinations. We talked before about possible assassinations. Iranian state TV has so far confirmed that the chief of staff of the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, General Hussein Salami, was assassinated in this initial volley. In addition, it is confirming that other chief scientists, Faridun Abbasi and Mohammad Mahdi, have also been assassinated. There's no official report that I've seen about the assassination of the chief of staff, Mohammad Bakri, from Iran, but there are other reports from around the Middle East that are already confirming that the chief of staff of the military, Mohammad Bakri, was also assassinated. So there's confirmations coming in from Iranian sources and from across the Middle East that that initial wave of assassinations was very, very successful thus far from Israel's perspective, obviously. In addition to that, we're seeing a couple other things. So there are reports of attacks in Natanz. Again, no one's still saying exactly what was the scale of that attack, but there are also reports of attacks in other Iranian nuclear facilities. There is a nuclear facility in Iraq where there is a heavy water plant, which is theoretically used for civilian purposes, but could also be used to create plutonium, which is a function that can serve the purpose like uranium in nuclear facilities. It was also reported that that was attacked in the different waves of attacks of Israel. In addition to that, one of the things that really caught my eye is a report that came out within Israel saying that the Israeli military is now launching its 5th wave of attacks in Iran. There's no reports of what happened exactly in each and every wave, but from the images that we're seeing that what we were saying initially, that there was one major attack that happened in Tehran, maybe another one in Natanz, but maybe Israel is holding off to see what is going to be Iran's response. That actually does not seem to be the case. In the last half an hour, we're seeing wave after wave of Israeli attacks. The last thing that I'm going to say before I take a breath is that there are recent reports coming out of Iran state TV that Iran is going to officially declare war in the coming hours. Now, Iran has never been at peace with Israel. There's no state of ceasefire between the countries. But officially declaring war is a symbolic state, but it also means something else. Israel officially declared war on Hamas on October 7th. What was the difference? Israel was attacking Hamas and Hamas was attacking Israel for the last 20 years. Officially declaring war means I am looking at this as now an ongoing engagement between the sides. I'm not looking at this as one of these rounds. In April, Israel attacked the consulate in Syria, then Iran attacked, then Israel attacked, and we were done. In November, Israel attacked, Iran attacked, and we were done. Saying I am going to declare war is saying, okay, we are now going to a long confrontation between the sides. Reports that Iran is going to declare war, we'll see in the coming hours.
Dr. Alon Bernstein, those are huge words, of course. And if that's confirmed by Fox News or Associated Press, we'll be able to bring it to our folks here on Live Now as well. But that's massive, possibly war there in the Middle East continuing to break out. When we're looking at the military and what each of these countries has at their disposal as well, what are your first thoughts there? Iran and Israel going up against each other. What could we possibly see, especially knowing that Israel today says that they were targeting some of these nuclear facilities there in Iran?
So very likely this is going to look different than the way the wars in the Middle East have looked since October 7th. It is possible that we will see, those sides declaring war, but again, that could change if Trump, we saw India and Pakistan rising up towards war, and then all of a sudden we had in turn Trump coming in and brokering a deal between the sides. So possibly we'll see something like that there. We will definitely not see a deal between Israel and Iran, but we may see the sides spiral down. If it does escalate towards all-out war, it's going to look very different than the wars we've seen in the Middle East. The Middle East has seen wars like between Iran and Iraq in the 80s. It has seen wars between Israel and Syria and Egypt. Then it has seen the more asymmetrical warfare between Israel and Lebanon, Israel and Hamas. All of those have involved a lot of air activity, naval activity, but the bulk of the fighting ended up being ground activity. The bulk of the fighting, when push came to shove, when it was not just these limited escalations, but instead larger actual wars, it ended up being invasions on the ground. That was the big change that happened in Israel and Hezbollah, right? We saw for over a year the attacks between Israel and Hezbollah. They fired rockets, Israel carried airstrikes, and that was it. When things escalated, when Israel invaded Lebanon, we're not going to see a ground invasion between Israel and Iran. It just geographically is not possible. You'd have to go through Iraq and Syria or Iraq and Jordan in order to get there. So that's not going to happen. So what does this war look like at this point? We're going to be looking at both sides. If, again, this escalation does continue to take off, we're going to look at both sides trying to get symbolic victories. Iran is going to fire likely barrages of hundreds of missiles simultaneously, hoping that between Israel, the United States, maybe Jordan, everyone who tries to intercept them, at least 3 or 4 get through. If they fire hundreds of missiles, 3 or 4 get through. If one of those happens to hit Israel's parliament, happens to hit a holy site in Israel or Israeli airport, that to them is a victory. And the war is going to be about those symbolic victories. Similarly, Israel is going to try to target symbolic assets in Iran. Less likely that we're going to see attacks against parliaments and things like that. More likely against the things that are important to the Iranian regime. Those nuclear facilities, possibly sites of the top senior figures, maybe the house of the supreme leader. But that is going to be the nature of this warfare. It's going to be a lot less about taking over territory and doing things that can actually, on the facts on the ground, lead to the other side surrendering. And instead, we're going to see much more an attempt to use aerial attacks in order to carry out those symbolic victories. Right now, Israel has had the last word as of the current hour, 10:15 on the East Coast here, 7:15 on the West Coast in the United States. But again, we are expecting Iran's retaliation to come sooner rather than later.
This guy is really smart. I really like this guy.
We've actually not seen Iran's retaliation yet.
Bad timing with Netanyahu out there because I can't hear
either that they were caught off guard,
but
that it actually taken them longer than
I really like this guy's
expect to
perspective.
retaliate. Or again, speculate.
He's kind of laying it out there. Again, my perspective on all of this is I think all Americans need to pay attention to these large crowds. There could be sleepers within those crowds that could cause damage, could cause harm. And they don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent. They just don't care. They're on a religious cause, and they would like to do whatever they got to do. So they need to pay. We need to pay attention.
Knew about the attack in advance. This is not a surprise to the United States, and it is not scrambling now to think what happened. It was all, to some extent, part of a coordinated plan.
Alon, we're getting a statement in from the U.S. State Department. I'm going to read it out. They say, as a result of the current security situation, we first have a statement. So they say this. Israel, as a result of the current security situation, the U.S. Embassy has directed all U.S. government employees and their family members to shelter in place until further notice. This is provided for your information as you make your own security plans. The entire tweet gets cut off, but I've got the full thing in front of me. It says, the U.S. Embassy reminds U.S. citizens of the continued need for caution and increased personal security awareness, including knowing the location of the nearest shelter in the event of a red alert, as security incidents, including mortar, rocket, and missile fire and unmanned aircraft system intrusions often take place without any warning. They say the security environment is complex.
Okay,
and can
go with
change
me on this
quickly.
thought process here.
As you and I have alluded to alone,
You
you and I have
buddy,
had
sorry.
endless
He's,
conversations
barking at
over
the-
the air
a tractor
since
going by.
October 7th.
I know this is going to sound kind of
2023
crazy, but
about
you
the
know,
ongoing
just
situation in
humor me for
Gaza,
a moment.
the wider escalations
Is it
that happen
possible
from time to time. One of the underlying fears
the
this
military
entire time has always been
had
the
been
risk
activated
of
to
some
be
sort
on
of
the
wider
streets
conflict?
in the
Whenever things would heat
U.S.
up between Israel and Hamas, whenever things would
Potentially,
heat up
they had
between
intel that this thing
Hezbollah
was
and
going to
the
go
IDF,
down,
we would always talk about, oh man,
and that they would have the
this
military
could
in
lead us
place
to some
in these
wider
large.
breakout. Ultimately, the biggest fear was some sort of war between
Events
Iran
at
and
these
Israel.
large
Was
events.
that not the
I mean,
chief
he's got the
concern
president has
with this entire thing as
the
far
largest
as escalation
military
goes?
workup on the streets right
Absolutely,
now in
but I
DC.
think that up until now,
He's
one
got
of the
tanks.
things
He's
that
got
has been
everybody there.
always on the radar is things that escalate,
But
quote,
I don't know if I'm
unintentionally,
just
right? I mean, it's hard to discuss
overthinking it.
war and death and these airstrikes
But
we're seeing that are in
man,
civilian areas. It's hard to discuss
with this
this
going
like, you
down
know,
now,
well, is this a good thing or a
that
bad
the
thing?
U.S.
And
is
like, you know,
really
is it
in
okay
a
if
heightened
it's
alert. Remember
organized
when we
or
used to get the
orchestrated in
alerts
advance
post
or
9/11?
spiraled out of control? But if we do
You know,
allow
red,
ourselves to talk
orange,
about things like that,
green,
then
when
the
that first
fears
came
up
out.
until now have largely been
Yeah, I mean,
escalations that would spiral out of control
right? I mean, we don't know,
without the
right? I
sides
mean, I don't
intended.
know. I mean,
Largely, we saw that between
there are a
Israel
lot
and Hezbollah.
smarter
You know,
people
Israel
here
and Hezbollah had been trading blows
in
at
the
each
chat
other
than
in
I
those
am.
tacit agreements between
That's
each
for
other.
sure.
They fire
So
rockets at
we
northern
just never
Israel.
know.
Israel retaliates against southern
But
Lebanon,
I
and the two
always
sides
think,
then go to sleep well at night.
you know,
And
outside
then
of the
all of a
box,
sudden, a
and it just
Hezbollah
occurred to me,
missile
well, wait a minute,
manages
here we
to
are on a
evade
Thursday
Israeli air
night, we're getting close
defenses,
to
lands
Saturday.
in
They've
a
just
soccer
killed
field in northern
all
Israel,
the
kills
senior,
12 children. Israel then retaliates and
you know,
kills Hezbollah's
military
second man,
leaders
Fuad Shukr. Hezbollah launches more
for
missiles.
for
All
the
of a sudden,
national
within
for
2 months,
the
Israel's
guard, the
invading
Iranian
Lebanon.
guard,
That was unintended.
and
When
there's
Hezbollah fired that
our
initial
border's been
missile,
open
that was not what they thought was
forever,
going to happen.
allowing
They
who knows
assumed
who or
that it was
what
going to be
into this
intercepted
country,
the same
and
way all of their
now
missiles had been intercepted thus
you know,
far.
now
So the
this
larger
thing
fear
goes down,
until now has
and it
really
just
been
so
about a
happens that you got
spiral and an
the
escalation
Marines
that would happen without
right
the
there
sides actually
in
intending,
Los Angeles.
with one side doing something that they
You know,
thought
and
was
if
going
you
to be
look
just
at this
within
tab
the
right now, this tab, there's really not anything happening in LA. It's kind of cooling down, but you still have thousands of assets on the ground in
all the
Los
heads of
Angeles,
Iran's military and
as well
scientific
as
leadership and not
in
expect
DC.
this to escalate to something further.
I don't know. I'm just
Not
thinking
expect that Iran would
probably
actually
crazy.
retaliate in a very escalatory manner. Now, maybe Israel assumes that it will do this, and Iran in turn will look to the United States to calm the situation down. Maybe Iran will retaliate in a barrage of missiles, and that's it. And maybe that will be the case. But the fear of larger escalations until now has really been from something that would be unintended. You know, similarly, the Houthis. We've talked about this many times. Over the last 2 weeks, the Houthis have launched, I'm counting in my head, but I'm going
the
to say
federal
at
judge
least
can't
10 ballistic
over
missiles from Yemen to Israel.
that.
Each and every one of these
This
was
lawfare's got to
intercepted,
stop,
and thus we don't even hear about
and
it.
this
It wasn't
judge
reported
is
on
not
any
going to
news
be able
sites. I
to
didn't talk
stop
about
the
it in my
president
news
of the
updates.
United
I don't think you
States
talked about it in
from
yours.
ordering the
Now
military to
imagine
do something.
one of those
Sorry,
missiles
that's
is
just
not
my opinion,
intercepted, but
and
instead
everybody
it
knows it.
manages to hit Tel
Everybody
Aviv
knows it, including
and
that
kills
judge that
30
made the
children because they
decision.
landed in a kindergarten. Or it manages to hit Israel's parliament or the Temple Mount, or Haram al-Sharif in Jerusalem. All of a sudden, we're looking at World War III in the Middle East. So there's a lot of things that could be unintended escalations that would happen between the sides, thinking, I'm just playing right now, but actually it goes further. At this point, it seems that Israel is very clearly indicated it's not just playing now, it wants things to go a step further. There are reports, again, as of 20 minutes ago when I jumped on, that said that Israel is launching its 5th wave in Iran. I'm going to take a look right now and see if there's more. that are happening right now. Israel is looking at this, though, as another escalation. What we don't know is how far this goes. Is this now an initial folly of Israel that's going to be maybe for 6 hours, 7 hours, and then Israel will say, we're done. We crippled Iran's nuclear facilities enough. Iran can retaliate if it wants, or we can be done. Or is Israel saying, okay, we're in this now for the long haul. We're in this for the all-out war. And like I've implied already several times, almost everything here depends on what U.S. President Trump says. If Trump calls Netanyahu and says, stop, enough, Netanyahu will stop. Israel has its own security considerations, but Israel is today more dependent on the United States than it ever has been in its history. Israel will stop. In turn, if Trump says, I am fed up with Iran stalling, go ahead, continue attacking until they come to me begging for a deal, likely that will continue. So at this point, we're all waiting for that, and that's why I'm, to some extent, surprised that the National Security Council has called for another 11, 12 hours from now, so we're all waiting.
All right, again, Dr. Alon Bernstein, he's been with us here as we're talking about the very latest that's there in the Middle East. If you're just now joining us here on Live Now from Fox, we want to reset for you. You're just turning on your TVs. You're seeing our banner in red there because of this breaking news that we've now been covering for the last 2 hours at this point. So we do know that this is Friday there on the other side of the world. It is just after 6 a.m. there in the Middle East. But we do know that Israel attacked Iran's capital early Friday morning with explosives booming across Iran, as Israel said that it had targeted
in law enforcement,
and military sites. This attack, though, comes as tensions have now reached new heights there in the region over Iran's
what happened in the Middle East
nuclear
during
program.
the 70s
So we've been getting in
and the
updates
80s.
as we now know.
And ask yourself, why do
Iranian state
schools
media that the head of
look
Iran's
like prisons?
paramilitary revolutionary guard is feared
They
dead
look
at
like
this
prisons
point. Of course, this is a
because
major
of
part of the internal
situations
structure there
like
in
in
the
Russia,
country as
Beslan,
well. We've heard from
where
Israeli Prime Minister
terrorists took
Benjamin
over
Netanyahu as well,
schools
saying that Israel
and
targeted
killed
Iran's main
many,
enrichment
many
facility in
children.
Natanz and the country's ballistic missile program, as
Imagine
well as
waking up
top
one day
nuclear scientists and
having single
officials. And
shooters
speaking of that as well, putting up the tweet there
simultaneously
on your screen, courtesy
attack
of
50
Reuters,
schools
saying
across
there
the
that
United
Iranian
States
state TV
together.
says that nuclear scientists, there two of them
That
have
would
been
be
killed there
something
in
that
the
this
strikes
country
that happened
has
this Friday.
never
So again, we wanted to reset, and our thanks again for Dr. Alon
hang on
Bernstein
for
for
a minute.
staying
You
with us
guys,
here for the
no, you
last
can't
few
hear me.
hours, walking us through here, because
Sorry, I didn't have that muted. That's why. Okay, I'll start again. Did you guys did you guys hear where I was going here? Okay, so where I was going here was individual lone wolves, large crowds, possibly schools, simultaneously struck at the same time across this country. Not good. That is a scenario that has been played out in law enforcement for years. We are now seeing, some of the results potentially within this country of some of the people that they're picking up. There are a lot of things going on behind the scenes. So we need to wake up as a country because our children are in danger. How do we know that? Just look up Beslan. Just look up Beslan. You keep saying this, but can you really hear me? Can everybody else hear me? Yeah, I don't think it's me. I agree. But thank you so much. Look up Beslan in Russia. I think it's Beslan. And then ask yourself why schools in Israel look like prisons. And the reason is there are some people in the world that want to hurt you. And my concern now, there it is, Beslan. My concern is now that this has happened tonight, with all of the situations going on the streets of the United States, I think we're at a higher risk for a lone wolf events. So I would say, and I will say to my family, just as they say in Hawaii, be akamai. Pay attention to what's around you. Don't be fearful. Fear is the opposite of faith. But simultaneously, let's not put ourselves into a position whereby we can be compromised. So we need to tell our families that, hey, right now with world events going on, we just need to pay attention. It's that simple.
A year, almost 2 years later, they are saying that Israel should seek some sort of agreement with the Palestinian entity, not with Hamas. But initially, when there is this threat against Israel, it's within the Israeli political culture and would be within the culture of most Western countries that when you're attacking the main enemy, the arch enemy, then everyone rallies together. There's a lot of critics in the United States of the war against Iraq back in 2003, much fewer critics of the war against Afghanistan in 2001. After 9/11, all sides, the most pacifist in Israel, in the United States, and the most hawkish, had to say that they are in support of attacking Al Qaeda and rooting out the Taliban. Similarly, in Israel, there are some more fringe political actors that are saying that Israel should not aspire for war and instead should be accommodating in the Middle East. But across the mainstream political spectrum, everyone is going to be in support of an attack in Iran that neutralizes Iran's nuclear capabilities. So in this sense, Netanyahu is coming in a lot more unified, a lot stronger. But one of the things that also has to be remembered is in the world of politics in general, and in Israeli politics specifically, things only last as long as they're in the headlines. This is possibly going to spiral and escalate to a war that will now be an open confrontation between Israel and Iran for months. It could also end in a matter of days. Whenever it ends, things in Israel are going to go back to the same levels of polarization. And I almost guarantee you that there's going to be accusations against Netanyahu that he did this because this week his government almost fell and wanted there to be distraction. This will happen later. Right now, everyone's going to rally behind the flag. And I'll say in a word, similarly in Iran. In Iran, there is vast competition between two sides of the political spectrum. There are the more hawkish figures that support more predominantly the statements or the perceptions of the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. And then there's also the more moderates, the ones that say, okay, yes, we're all for exporting the revolution, but also we need a functioning economy and we can't actually spend all our money on our proxies. They are more supported by the current president. But right now, when Iran is being attacked, when Israel is assassinating prominent figures in Tehran, it is attacking the nuclear facilities in Natanz and in Iraq, and reportedly in Qom, at this point, everyone across the Iranian spectrum is going to be beating the war drums of retaliation against Israel. What happens after the initial response and what happens, that already will be up to politics. But right now, both countries, Israel and Iran, are very likely going to be unified behind now striking against the other one.
So Israel strikes Iran, as you mentioned, and as we just saw on the screen there, Christina, maybe we can bring that up one more time about Iran saying that they will have a decisive response to Israel's attack. The AP saying that Iran's state-run news agency quotes an anonymous official saying Iran will have a decisive response to Israel's attack. As you alluded to, Alon, Israel knows that a decisive response is likely after such a strike that we're seeing tonight. at least 5 rounds, as far as we're hearing from you so far. How does that work into their calculus when they carry out something like this? They know that a response is expected, but ultimately, all the people in charge of the Israeli government, the Iranian government, is it commonly understood throughout all these entities that World War III is not something that anybody wants it to escalate to? There's always a sense of cooler heads will eventually have to prevail. There's a want for that, correct?
In theory, yes, but where most cases, I'm going to take this sort of, back it up a notch to look at warfare in general after World War II in the 20th and 21st century. In most cases, wars have not ended with a decisive defeat or decisive victory of either side. In most cases, we have not seen, like in World War II, with the enemy army, so to speak, completely taking over your country and dismantling it, the forces on the ground literally occupying your entire territory, and that is why you surrender. What we have seen mostly in warfare throughout the 20th and 21st century post-World War II has been countries that go to war and pound each other until a diplomatic resolution is reached. Sometimes that happens as a result of one country obviously being the victor and a diplomatic resolution is reached based on what that country wants. Sometimes that happens because both sides realize, okay, enough's enough. But even in the cases of the United States and Iraq, for example, the United States took over Iraq, but then it didn't do what it did in Germany and Japan. Instead, it quote unquote gave Iraq back to the Iraqi regime, to a new regime, and tried to rebuild it up. So that is usually what we're seeing. Why is that important? Because when it comes to how far this is going to escalate, is this going to look at World War III? Clearly, both sides don't want World War III. Number one, that's true. Both sides, but the leaderships of both sides really don't want to have to go back to their people the same way Lebanon and Hezbollah had to go back to its people and say, yeah, our country's now destroyed. We have very little to show for it. That's what Hezbollah is facing. That's why I said Hezbollah is now in a bind. They brought about the destruction of large parts of Lebanon as a result of Israel's attacks and had very little to show for it. So both Iran and Israel don't want this to escalate to the point where their countries are decimated with missiles, with constant attacks, and have nothing to show. On the other hand, because we are very unlikely to see one country overrunning the other country and forcing its surrender, ultimately what's going to happen is either side is going to come to the United States, to Russia, to China, to the United Nations, to some sort of international broker and say, okay, we're willing to insert here. Iran is willing to sign a nuclear agreement based on what the U.S. wants. Okay, the U.S. tells Israel to stop attacking. In turn, Israel is going to come and say, okay, we are willing to stop attacking if Iran does A, B, and C, stops funding its proxies, stops whatever. And that is the reason that while both sides have an interest in this not escalating to World War III, they also have a political interest in saying, yeah, but I don't care if it does. Because they want those international proxies to come back to them and say, no, please don't. Please don't, right? If you are willing to indicate that you are
Okay, I'm going to go over here, give everybody another perspective.
Than anyone would need for only a fuel program or only for nuclear energy. And so a lot of the war hawks have been pointing to that, saying, look, it's clear that they're going to do this in order to try to ratchet up their ability for escalation. And so one of the things, though, that people have pointed to is say, well, Iran, the back and forth has always been, well, Iran was doing that because there is no Iran deal. Trump, of course, ended Obama's Iran deal, which was a total handoff to them back in 2018. He ends this thing after the pallets of cash, and he had run on it, of course, back in 2016, the Obama deal. And so after ending that deal, that's really when Iran pushed towards this enrichment to say, we are going to essentially kind of have a middle ground of saying, well, we're not restarting the program, but we are enriching this uranium, which of course puts them in a situation to say, well, they would potentially be able, if they chose, to use that in a weapon at any time. That being said, though, that's my distillation of the intel on both sides there. That being said, we do know that Iran had been, and it seems in good faith, conducting these negotiations with Steve Witkoff, having meetings with him as appointed by President Trump. We saw President Trump earlier today saying that he had directed all members of his administration to pursue negotiations and diplomatic means of working with Iran to end this potential threat and prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. And something where you've also seen in reports, I believe The Guardian had actually put out at one point, that there was a potential for Russia to come in and be the guarantor of this program. Russia, of course, being the country that finished the building of the Bushehr nuclear power plant, which we had on the map a minute ago, that's there on the coast. That is their completed nuclear power plant, the only one functional within Iran right now. It needs that water source, can't really be in the mountains or the desert. And so this had been a potential triangulation, if you will, of the negotiations between Ukraine, Russia, Israel, and Iran to say if the Russians were able to come in, this would be something that Obama's Iran deal had never considered, although it is kind of similar to one of the Syria deals prior to the Red Line back in 2013, where Russia came in and was the guarantor of Syria's chemical weapons. China also played a small role in that. And so there was really a lot of potential for talk regarding this. Now, of course, it remains to be seen what will happen, because we don't know what the fallout will be, both locally from, again, whether or not these facilities were destroyed. I think there are a lot of questions as to whether or not Israel had the capability of actually being able to really take out the program, given the fact that they are underground. Blake was mentioning that Israel doesn't have the bunker buster bombs that the U.S. has to be able to go after those underground facilities. And then, of course, whether or not Iran decides to blame the United States or claim this as some kind of proxy attack and cancel the negotiations. So a lot of that is going to be up in the air, just as the Israeli jets are up in the air right now over Iran.
This has such incredible geopolitical implications here. Blake, on the ground, what is going on in Israel? And do we know the breadth or the depth or the scale of these military strikes? And walk our audience through exactly the technical side of what just happened, probably what's happening right now. There are probably jets still right now, we know this certainly, in the air that are coming back from Israel. And we kind of saw this happening real time in our group chats. We're like, oh, there are sources that hear jets over Iraq. There are sources, and we kind of had a little bit more of a heads up than that. And Blake, before you do that, everybody watching, I want to hear from you, freedom@charliekirk.com. Do you support Israel striking Iran preemptively? I want to hear from you. Freedom@charliekirk.com. We're very interested. Freedom@charliekirk.com. Blake, your thoughts?
Okay, yeah. So first of all, if you want the absolute breaking stuff, I'm monitoring Israeli news sites, the Jerusalem Post, Haaretz. Those are going to be where you get any info from the Israeli government, the IDF, as quickly as possible. Also, of course, on X, it was very funny how we were seeing on X, reports of planes flying, reports of explosions. And then I'm looking at the New York Times, I'm looking at CNN. It takes them ages to catch up to the basics that something is happening.
Are you kidding me?
And, I think we were live before CNN even had a little bit, thing up top. But I want to read what's Jerusalem Post has kind of a breaking, steadily updated thing where they're getting the info from the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces. And so what they say is, first of all, there are warning sirens have been set off to get the public ready for a potential Iranian counterattack. No ballistic missiles have been fired yet, but there are thousands of them. According to the IDF, so this is their justification for action, they said that Iran had enough uranium to weaponize it to nuclear levels to make 15 nuclear weapons within days. This is what the IDF says. In recent days, they say, Iran developed a plan with Hezbollah and Hamas and other proxies to destroy the state of Israel, potentially including attempts to attack via all borders, including Egypt and Jordan. The IDF says this was, quote, a point of no return. Benjamin Netanyahu has entered the security cabinet. They're having some high stakes meeting of the cabinet. It says this might be answering your question about why they would hit Tehran. IDF targets include commanders, bases, as well as nuclear sites, though the main goal is the nuclear sites. The IDF claims they believe Iran was taken by surprise and was attacked in places they did not expect. That would potentially answer the question of why they would do it now rather than waiting through the weekend. There might be an element that they had already given up on the process, but they didn't want to tip their hand that they had given up by waiting for negotiations over the weekend to fail. And then Jerusalem Post continues here. Israel has had strong coordination with the U.S., but Israeli military officials refuse to say whether America was pre-updated or fully coordinated into the current attack. And that's all the relevant info we have now. And they're constantly adding to this. So I think this is statements that are coming from an IDF person as we speak, and it's middle of the night there. So this is all unfolding.
But help me understand though. I want Blake, help me understand this. So negotiations were going on. This is the Just the News headline. This is not Charlie Kirk's opinion. This is Just the News from John Solomon. Just the News headline is this, which is Israel launches attack on Iran in defiance of Trump's urgings. So help me understand. It seems like negotiations were going on. Do we even know enough about that? So help basically fill in the blanks here.
So I believe Trump had said there was some sort of deadline to make a deal, I think a few months ago, and that deadline was right around now, or maybe it even just passed. But Trump has always been, we know Trump is a pro-peace guy. He'll always say Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. He is not willing to allow that to happen, but he's Trump the deal maker. He's always going around saying, want to make a deal. I'm ready to make a deal. I'm hopeful for making a deal. And we saw just today, he's saying, I'm committed to reaching a diplomatic resolution of this. Now, him saying it today, there's a couple possible interpretations. One is he genuinely was still seeking that deal and was trying to message, please make the deal before something happens. Or there's the possibility they already knew this was going to happen, but they wanted to communicate that America is not directly involved. And we've seen several attempts to communicate that just before the strikes happened. I believe
that's what I was kind of saying, that did they have a heads up, and now the president's kind of moved everything around. So, hey, I have a meeting at 8:00. So I wanted to, just come up here, make sure you guys are aware of this, please. I'm sure there's other channels running it right now, but I have a church meeting actually at 8:00. So I want to give the Lord his due and also let you guys know that this thing was going down tonight. So anyway, thank you for being here. I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream and jump out, and then I will see you on Sunday. I have a great program ahead on Sunday. You guys are not going to want to miss it. Part of it's going to be about summer and summer well. So anyway, thank you guys for always being here, and please continue to take care of yourselves, and please be safe. I'll see you in a little bit. Aloha.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away, you and me, go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face. we're taking away, yeah, we're taking away